that game. Their first conference game will be September 15th at VMI. They will also have road games in conference play this year at the Citadel, at Wofford, at Mercer. They'll play at home in conference play starting on September 22nd against Furman, with other home games being against Chattanooga, Western Carolina, and Sanford. Homecoming will be this year on October 6th against non-conference opponent Gardner-Webb. ETSU women's basketball in action tonight as they play host to Furman. With a sports flash on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, I'm Matt Pauley.
Well, I'm Marky Billson, back here with you. Tri-City Sports Now. Night at 7:30 down in Greenville. They didn't postpone this one. ETSU is going to be taking on Furman. These two teams, well, Steve Forbes picked Furman to win the Southern Conference, but right now it is ETSU with an undefeated conference mark, 5-0 as a matter of fact, that leads the SoCon. Furman a game back. They've only lost one game, that to Wofford, a team that beat North Carolina. By the way, did you see, yes, the other day, Clemson still, Wofford can win at Chapel Hill. Clemson, nationally ranked and all, still can't. It's just, one of those, Florida beats Kentucky every year. They have every year since, what was it, 87? I think Kerwin Bell was the quarterback back then. But there was always that for 40 years, Notre Dame beat Navy every year, went to Roger Staubach up until, the last decade or so, when Notre Dame was down for a period of time, I guess, under, Charlie Weiss. So you get these the Globetrotters and Generals, obviously, this sort of thing. Anyway, the Buccaneers will be playing. The winner will be in first place one way or the other. I mean, obviously, or at least tied in the loss column. If Furman wins, ETSU could take a nice lead for that regular season crown if they win the game. But ETSU has not won in Greenville, South Carolina since 2004. I was a little surprised to hear that. Steve Forbes is 0-2 down in Greenville. Furman for a lot of years, just when you were watching SoCon basketball, they were middle of the pack at best. Now they're a conference contender. I know that a lot of the, big boys of the conference called Charleston and Davidson are no longer around. So, it's a little bit easier now for Furman, or for that matter, any of the schools, ETSU included, to compete. But that game in 2004, by the way, was reminded, it was won by a last-second shot by Tim Smith, who I think may be the most overrated athlete in the history of the Tri-Cities. I know he's the leading scorer in the history of ETSU basketball, but he was a point guard. And what that's like is, a quarterback who leads his team in rushing. So Tim Smith, meet Randall Cunningham and Bobby Douglas. That's not exactly meet Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, is it? Or Drew Brees. Some talk about whether or not he's going to come back or not. Probably will. Anyway, question here is, with the 2004, I wanted to say it was the last second shot, and Smith had this reputation, you would do this, where he's the point guard, and he would always, in those situations at the end, ignore all of his teammates and then try to take it on all himself. And it drove me absolutely nuts watching this guy. And, I think it goes without saying that after Zaki Wadood and Gerald Fields graduated and it became Smith's team, they went 7-19 the first year. Went 500 the next, but that's when they joined the ASUN. So, without the two studs, Fields and Wadood, of back in the day, Smith proved he was not capable. He was a selfish leader, basically. And what I will never forgive him for, and you can talk about how somewhat kid gloves the media around here is a lot, is that Smith never received the criticism of trying to improvise rather than set up a play in the two NCAA tournament games that he had played in. There were about 10 seconds left. with Wake Forest. ETSU is trailing by 2. And instead of setting up a play, and I do give Ed DeChillis, who was his last game there at ETSU, I do give him some criticism here. Basically said, go ahead, Tim, improvise. You're my hot hand. And that was a fatal decision because he then ignored all his teammates, got pushed into the corner, put up a horrible 3-point shot to win. I don't even know if it hit iron. And that was it. Better coaching with a actual, play drawn up. And for that matter, less selfishness from Tim Smith, things could have been a lot different. Next year, ETSU is trailing by 3 with 13 seconds left to Cincinnati. They've gone back and forth with the Bearcats all day. Bob Huggins is still the coach at Cincinnati. Back and forth go ETSU and Cincinnati. ETSU, by the way, that was picked to go to the Sweet 16 that year by Sports Illustrated. And needing a 3-point shot with 13 seconds left, naturally Tim Smith drove the lane. You tell me. 2 boneheaded plays. The one time it actually worked out, his selfishness actually worked out, was the last victory ETSU had at Furman back in 2004. Now, it would seem to me that it would be a good bet for ETSU to win this game. By the way, mid-major poll ETSU is number 5, Furman is number 8. They're still not, I know Andy Katz ranked ETSU 36th overall in the country, and exciting times here. The player to watch, of course, and he was player of the year in the Southern Conference, although I don't think he should have been, was Devin Sibley. You want to talk about choking at the end. Remember those turnovers that Sibley made late in the game against ETSU, the overtime victory for the Bucs that basically won them the Southern Conference Championship, a 3-way tie with UNCG and Furman, and of course they'd go on to win the SoCon tourney and go to the NCAAs. But Devin Sibley, like I said, perhaps the GOAT for Furman not winning the title outright by the turnovers that he had late in the game against ETSU. Still, he is averaging 16 points a game and is the 4th best shooter in the league in terms of field goal percentage. Furman isn't just limited to him. They've got Daniel Fowler with 11 points a game, Matt Rafferty with 11 too, and John Davis with 11. So 3 players, Davis, Rafferty, and Fowler. Sound like sportscasters there, don't they? Davis, Rafferty, and Fowler. They're coached by Bob Rickey. It's his first year at the helm. He has used something, though, that makes me think that ETSU has a brighter future for the rest of the season than Furman, is that Bob Rickey, the coach of the Furman Paladins, has used the same lineup for all 18 games that the Paladins have played. All 18 games. And that, to me, says maybe they don't have the depth that ETSU does, who has 10 players, actually 11 if you count guys who are no longer on the team, but 10 players averaging 10 or more minutes this season. So ETSU is a deeper team. And as the season goes on, that could be of the benefit. By the way, early on, it's amazing how ETSU has righted their woes. Remember their opening day loss? They lost by, 19 Northern Kentucky. Then they got them again in Johnson City and beat the Norse. Well, they also made a lot of turnovers in that game. Now, ETSU has sliced the turnovers in half. Then, at the beginning of the year, ETSU couldn't hit a 3. Now, in the league, they're shooting almost making more than a third of their shots, 34%. It's not great, but it's effective enough. It's improving. So ETSU, obviously, they've won, 11 out of their last 12? So they are improving this year. Now, by the way, this is an old-fashioned women's-men's doubleheader. You probably know that the women were supposed to go and play Furman yesterday at Greenville, but game got snowed out. Did you see what happened, by the way, with the Charlotte Checkers, where they played a game with no fans, no ticket? I thought on that here later on in the show. But the women, they're also undefeated in the SoCon. Of course, they played a monster schedule out of conference, 10-8 overall. But a victory down in Furman, and Furman's 11-7 overall, 2-2 in a conference. And guess what? The Lady Bucks would be 4-0 and in first place. I know that, what was it? Back in, was it 2009? ETSU won, was it 2009? Or is it yeah, I think so. That ETSU went to the NCAA tournament, both men and women. Maybe, just maybe, that could happen again. So there you are. Anyway, a couple of good game in the SoCon to look forward to tonight. Tomorrow, I'll be giving you Happy Valley and Unicoi County basketball. And, well, let's see here. The sponsors of the game are as follows. By the way, Unicoi County 5-0 in the conference. They're in first place. Happy Valley struggling this year, but they'll be at home. Here are the sponsors. Health and Home Care, Jones and Church Farms, Unicoi County Insurance Agency, Unicoi Gas Utility District, Farm Bureau Insurance. Irwin Paint and Body, Clinchfield Federal Credit Union, the computer guy in Irwin who does really good work, folks. Relay for Life of Unicoi County. We're going to have an event with them coming up fairly soon. The Dentist, Dr. Jason Cunningham. Irwin Utilities, who sponsors all the free throws of Unicoi County basketball. Irwin Bonding, Unicoi County Memorial Hospital, Urgent Care of Irwin, Irwin Pets, and the Irwin Kentucky Fried Chicken, giving listeners to Unicoi County basketball a $25 gift certificate when they tune in, and they're lucky enough to win it this year, or $25 worth of free chicken. So there you are. I would call and point out here that we've got a circumstance where not only is the game going to be at Happy Valley, and so we're going to be broadcasting just like the women and men will play with Furman. We'll have the same thing, women and men, or males and females. Obviously, the first game will be the female basketball teams, Unicoi County and Happy Valley, and then the males. Begins at 6:30. We'll be on a few minutes early to give you the starting lineups of the girls' game. And then the boys follow at 8 o'clock. So looking forward to that. Coming up tomorrow. Friday night, obviously, high school basketball night. All right. So I want to thank those sponsors right there. I've got some things here to discuss in the last minute. I do want to, though, talk a little bit about, I guess, Missouri, the revenge of Quanzo Martin, as Missouri defeats Tennessee yesterday. This, from the SEC Network, was perhaps the highlight of the game.
By Barnett. Here comes Geist all the way. Got it.
Jordan Geist slam dunk after a fast break put the Tigers up by 6 points, 47-41 on number 21 Tennessee down in Thompson Bowling. Missouri would go on to win by 8 in a relatively low-scoring game, 59-51. Not really that much of a surprise. Again, revenge of Quanzo Martin, I suppose. John Caleb Calhoun, or I should say Caleb Calhoun. His first name is John, but he goes by Caleb. Of all for Tennessee.com said on the show yesterday that he would be happy with a split during this week for Tennessee. Would that keep them in the rankings? Possibly. They're 21. They've got a little bit of leeway. But nevertheless, Missouri, a team that before Quanzo Martin got there, won only 8 games. And this was a guy that you wanted to run off. And eventually did to California. Hey, there you go. But I'll tell you one thing about Tennessee fans. I know that they tend to think of their team tremendously optimistically. And maybe that's to their benefit. And maybe it's to the benefit of other teams as well. Hey, if Tennessee fans didn't clamor for John Gruden, would he be coaching the Oakland Raiders now? Or would he be, you can't hire him, he's been out of the league game for 9 years. Would Arizona State have taken a chance with Herm Edwards? Because that hire would have been very similar to a hypothetical John Gruden to Tennessee hire. And what about what Pittsburgh Pirates fans are doing? I'm going to talk about baseball when we come back. It's Tri-City Sports Now on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities.
Destination Tires take you anywhere you want to go.